How's it going, folks? I'm Matthew. This is Lemora's Cards, and today we're going to be talking about Cowtown Throwdown, big platinum level cEDH event that just took place this past weekend with 256 players, making it, from what I can tell and what I've heard, the biggest in-person cEDH event ever, with one of the biggest prize pools ever. It was a big 12K, competing for $12,000, a sword and a belt buckle and maybe a trophy and I don't know, a bunch of other random stuff. I attended this event. It was a huge deal, like all these platinum events are. It's kind of the big events that people look forward to throughout the year, and today we're going to be talking about it. I'm going to be going over the meta breakdown and the top 16 decks, as I always do for these videos. This one won't be the spiciest, wildest thing you've ever seen. There is some pretty cool stuff for an event of this size, but these are like the big, most competitive events. You should expect a decent number of good decks and good players to make appearances here. That's just kind of the nature of these things, right? I also attended this event. I'm not going to be going over my deck list because it hasn't changed all of that much since the last time I did a deck list breakdown, and having like 3 Rog Thras videos pretty close together seems a little unnecessary, but you can check out my deck list in the link in the description if you're curious about any changes that I made. Gonna also go over my experience of the event and kind of what I felt about it. Give it to you guys straight like I always do. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below which of these decks or pilots were your favorite. Who are you rooting and tooting for at the Cowtown Throwdown? And how do you think of how the meta has been developing? Thank you as always to my amazing patrons over on Patreon. Their support helps me make lots of videos like this. I got lots of stuff coming out this week. It's a little slow because I had some travel issues and I was exhausted after Cowtown, but I'm going to try to be getting lots of really exciting stuff out as quick and as good as I can. So hope you stick around. Now, that being said though, let's go ahead and hop into it. Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product, get anything that you want really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. This is one of the best ways you can support the channel, and again, it's just free stuff. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try. This video is brought to you by Beholder Gaming, who is throwing a cEDH 10K July 27th and 28th at Charlie's Collectible Show in Stone Mountain, Georgia. This event is fully proxy friendly, will be one of your last chances to earn points for the Topdeck Invitational, as well as the first platinum event in the Beholder Gaming Southeastern Circuit, an invitational circuit for players down here in the Southeast. I'll be attending this event, and I can't wait to see you there. It's going to be great. Find out more in the description below. Now, I think because the meta breakdown is pretty straightforward, we'll do that first, and then we'll go into the my experience of the event and kind of my review of it. What do we got? Biggest cEDH event ever. Tymna Kraum, 35 of the 256. Not too surprising, with 4 top 16s, 11% conversion rate, not the craziest. Sisay, 3 and 22, 13%. 2 Rog size getting in there. It felt like there was more Rog size this weekend, but maybe it was just being around like kind of the Cabal people, and it just felt like omnipresent. But I mean, yeah, there were more Tymna Kraums and more Sisays there. It felt like at my tables, I just never saw the Sisays. Same with Nadu's, but Nadu did show up and did top. It's still doing the thing. And then we had another pretty popular deck, Kennen, with 14 and no tops. Ob Nixilis was pretty popular option with none. None of us Rog Thras boys made it. I know Sam Black got very, very close. And yeah, we have a couple of one-offs that make it there, and we'll talk about those as we do. But yeah, Tymna Kraum, Sisay, Rog side, definitely still seeming like the decks to beat. And Nadu putting up arguably as good or a better performance than some of those decks this weekend. Talking to a lot of these, 12 other Nadu pilots who didn't make it, they felt like the deck was pretty hated on and was really struggling in this environment. Didn't get to talk to the 2 pilots who did top with it and their experience, but it got there and people were really ready for it and really hating on it, and it still put in some numbers at least. So my experience of the event was a little weird. I had a lot of travel issues where I had to pull an all-nighter to get there, and then ended up having to stay the night at the airport because my flight got delayed, and pull an all-nighter to get home, and that really sucked. Also was going in a little distracted, not focused on the event just because of kind of my own stuff, and whatever, that happens. Sometimes, life stuff happens. So I went in, kind of whatever, but the event ran as smoothly as they always do. I've never had an issue with any of the big platinum top deck events having any issues at all. Judge calls are always super quick and clean. Judge staff is always great. Never have any issues in the event space. I think there was a little bit of water leaking, but they handled that pretty well and pretty quickly. Wasn't an issue really. Rounds are always incredibly smooth. There's no sitting around waiting for pairings. It's always just time's up in the round. we got all the results. Boom, you guys are ready to go. Let's do it. And that's great. You know, they have really nailed and perfected running a cEDH event at this point. I can't speak too much to the coverage because I was there, so I wasn't watching a lot of coverage of the event. I did see a little bit of the finals, and that was cool. I liked having Lauren and Zane on the mic. We know whenever they get knowledgeable people on there, love to hear it. Maybe they get a little goofy for my taste sometimes. I wouldn't mind, maybe mind a little more professionalism sometimes from them, but sometimes the chat, you know, gets them going too. So everything on that front was good. They had a player cam that they switched to that was, you know, kind of nice to have that option to take a look at the players and get a sense of how everybody's feeling in the pod and, you know, get more than just their hands, you know, actually see like who's kind of maybe looking a little pressured and who's kind of more relaxed and things like that. So that's nice. One thing I'll say about the event was that for it to have been advertised as this huge step up, you know, it's a bigger event with bigger prizing, partnering with another company, Iron Deck, to make it all happen and stuff like that. It didn't necessarily feel like it was a step up outside of numbers go up. There were some vendors and you know, some artists and stuff, and that was about it. It didn't feel like a huge event outside of just there's a whole bunch of Magic people playing. I think to me, and we're going to talk about this probably after the Invitational, some ideas that Eric and I have been talking about and in terms of stuff we'd like to see. I think getting these things to feel more like big Magic events, like if you're competing with MagicCon, you know, that's that slot, you know, there's Pro Tours going on at the same time. I would maybe like things to feel a little bit bigger going forward. And, you know, it's hard to balance that and making the event itself literally bigger and offering more prizing. Things have been going really well, and I wouldn't like to see them stagnate. I told you, you know, I kind of was iffy going into the event, didn't really feel that focused and that great. You know, take what I say with a grain of salt, but to me, it kind of felt like all the other events. And maybe it was just my own expectations of it being, you know, a more grandiose thing, but it kind of just felt like another cEDH event. The tournament ran well. Competition was really fierce. If you're in it for that, you're great. But if you're showing up to hang out and do stuff, it's not, I mean, there's cool people there, but there's not a lot of official things going on that are pulling you there outside of the cEDH tournament. So that might be something I'd like to see going forward, making them feel more like an event than just a tournament, but maybe that doesn't line up with their goals and that's not something they want to see. So not trying to slander the event. It was great, like I said, but I don't know, just some thoughts that I have on it. Now we're going to be looking at the top 16 players who made it through the 7 rounds of 256 other players who showed up and got to the top. As I do, I will skim a bit more through the really established decks that don't have a lot of changes, try to point out interesting things about them, but you guys know how it is. I'm not going to sit here and go over every single Tymna Kraum card, things like that, when they're not really that different. I'll mention some meta changes, and then of course, if we look at decks that are a little bit more unique or I haven't talked about recently, we'll discuss some more. Here's a deck I have covered pretty recently, and it comes in a few different variants, and it's becoming more and more popular again. It was kind of popular when I first started making content and fell off, and now it's popular again, and that's Malcolm Vial Smasher. You sometimes see like kind of mid-rangey versions of this, and sometimes it's more Turbo Grixis. Looks like here we're not going super heavy on like the big creatures. We're not reanimating Niv Mizzets. We've got 2 synergistic pirates, and then Glenhorn Buccaneer as a 1-card win con with Malcolm, and then good cards, basically like, you know, the cards Roxai would be playing, right? Same kind of deal, right? This is like looking at the Roxai sorcery slot, other than there's only the 2 wheels, so no Misfortune, no Windfall, things like that. Ring Twister and Wheel of Fortune. But yeah, Meme Bet, J-Will, Tutors, Beseech, like this is good, Grix is good stuff. Other than Ponder being here, maybe in like the slot, you know, this to be compared to, I guess, like the Gataxian Probe slot in a deck like Roxai. This offers more selection, is infinitely more mana, I guess. But especially in a deck like this, like Ponder and Brainstorm are cards that some more turbo decks have ran to have consistency and be able to find, you know, make sure they find gas. Like, I got a bunch of mana, I need a good card, let's take a look. Ponder lets you really function, look at 4 cards, and is great with fetch lands. You know, if you play Legacy, you understand how powerful this card can be, but isn't the most popular in the world right now. Instance, also on the Brainstorm. So yeah, is kind of prioritizing that kind of effect. And another interesting one we've got here is Quicken. 1 blue, next sorcery spell you cast this turn can be cast as though it had flash, draw a card. So what does this let us do? It lets us flash in a Meme Bet. That's kind of hot. Wheels, which can be really interesting as well. Tutors, you know, most of these, you know, Yogg Will and the Meme Bet, depending on what's in the graveyard, this might not be the things you necessarily want to do at instant speed, but like a tutor or a wheel can be pretty hot to do it in like somebody's upkeep or in response to something big. Not a card we see a ton of, but I have seen it pop up in cEDH, so that's a pretty interesting selection. We also see the days here, right? That's like kind of a ROG size staple. Notably, we are on the Final Fortune, the Born Upon a Wind, of course, and pretty much any Grixis deck, you'll see those. Not opting for Last Chance or Warrior's Oath here for more extra turn effects. And we got tons of interaction. We do have the Sink into Stupor, blue MDFC, as well as Flare of Denial, which, like I mentioned, isn't the most popular card in the world. We don't have that many blue creatures, but we do have one that sits in play a lot with Malcolm. And when we're doing our combo turn, especially if we're breaching or thorkling or whatever, we don't actually really care about Malcolm beyond like, yeah, I'll use Fierce Guardianship first, and then Deflecting Swat, and then I'll use the Flare of Denial last to sacrifice the Malcolm. Of course, a Nas deck, Defense Grid, and Grinding Station for our Underworld breaching, and then a whole bunch of rocks and Wishclaw. You know the drill. We're on the Necro Dominance, so the Rock-Sai enchantments as well. You know, Mystic Ristic, Breach, Necropotence, and Necro Dominance. We've been seeing some people opt for things like Alchemist Retrieval or other bounce spells, going kind of like up 1 or 2 when they do Necro Dominance, just to make sure they have a way to clear it off for their breach wins, stuff like that. Not every player is opting to do that. I don't know that you necessarily want to do that. Sometimes you'll just figure it out anyways, but just something I noticed at the event talking to people. And then we're on 26 total lands, so a slightly higher land count with something like Forbidden Orchard showing up. And no Surveil lands, it looks like. Pretty lean to the ground version of Grixis Pirates, kind of looking to do the turbo breach Thoracle shenanigans basically in a shell that offers a bit of a value engine in the zone and then a bit of a random goblin. And of course the pretty hard to interact with 1-card win con with Glenhorn Buccaneer. Then we've got one of our 2 Nadus showing up, and we've seen a little bit of variation on the Nadus we've covered on the channel so far. Again, I'm gonna assume that you're watching this one, you kind of get the deal with Nadu and some of the stapley cards. If not, the last video I did, Command Fest Tacoma, I went pretty in depth on some of the Nadu cards and why they're there, but we're gonna take a look at kind of what stands out in this one. So we do have Fairy Mastermind, can show up as like an outlet to kill everybody, and been seeing more and more of that, and just a pretty good draw engine. And then yeah, we've got our targeters like Unctus and Feto Alchemist, Seeker of Skybreak. We've got the token creators like Springheart Nantuko and Scoot Swarm. We've got Endurance here to do some loops and maybe stop somebody from winning, but ideally just be able to loop through cards in our deck. Kitten being a pretty busted card, so not really any super wild selections here. Sorceries, 3 tutors. Instants, we got the Quick Reflexes, bunch of interaction, the Sea King's Blessing, and Sylvan Paradise, so both of that effect. Essence Flux showing up here. You're not getting too lost in the sauce. The ones that get you either the most out of Nadu or just the cards that are the best in cEDH right now. So we've got some of the fast mana. We've got Shuko, probably the card most known for going off with Nadu. Vexing Bauble showing up here to shut off people's free interaction on turns we're going off. Lightning Greaves here as well, and the Umbral Mantle. So 3 different equipment that we can equip for 0. Mystic Ristic, and then 34 lands. Maybe that's the highest land count I've covered. I think around 32 is what we were seeing. Decent amount of utility lands, stuff like Cephalid Coliseum. Got the Hedge Mage, Gaia Reach Sanitarium, so Shifting Woodland. Teleria, which is a land that lets you target a creature of yours, so that's nice. This one, I don't think I've ever seen in cEDH before. It's kind of hilarious. Nothing crazy standing out, at least that I see. It looks like a lean Nadu list that looks pretty focused on just running the best enablers for it. It's not running 80 billion different cards that target other things. It's just kind of running the best stuff, trying to play a reasonable game plan, and worked out pretty well this event. Then we're going to see the first of many Tymna Kroms here. Creature package running kind of the standard if you're not cutting Draenith Magistrate, which has kind of been on the chopping block for the TNKs recently. Just about all the rest of these creatures are what you expect. Image and Metamorph, Op Agent. Sorceries, we're on the 1 wheel. Deluge as a board wipe. And then stapley cards, right? Rite of Flame, Tutors, Sevrak, Mean Bet, Instants. We are on the Dispel and the Offer You Can't Refuse, which they've been becoming cards that you see more and more of recently in some of these higher color piles. Swords and Path, really opting to run a pretty high amount of interaction, pretty flexible interaction. Rest of the stuff is pretty stock. Artifacts, you know how it is, right? With TNK, it's a whole bunch of rocks. Not always Mox Amber has come in and out of decks. I would say on average, they're not running it, but some of the good pilots do. And then Wishclaw Talisman. Enchantments, we are on the Smothering Tithe, no Necropotence. And the lands, we're on the Cavern of Souls for our Cavern on Human. We're on the Spire of Industry, and we're on the Undercity Sewers as a Surveil land. Now we're looking at the second of many Tymna Kroms. Here you kind of see that choice being made to cut the Draenith Magistrate, going down to 12 creatures, running the exact same creatures minus Draenith. Sorceries, we are on the Reanimate, still here from Freedom Waffle. And then I think everything else is exactly the same. same. Instance, we have the Dispel, no offer you can't refuse. We're running Miscast instead. We're also doing Path and Swords. We're on both Red Blast, also on the Mox Amber, whole bunch of rocks, Wishclaw Talisman. And then we've seen this in, I think, the last event I covered where Freedom is rocking the Copy Artifact, and I saw a little bit more of and more people experimenting with this card recently because there's a decent amount of artifacts, right? Worst case scenario, it's like a slightly harder to cast Arcane Signet or Fellwash Stone, a lot of pods. Can copy a Mana Crypt, can copy a Wishclaw Talisman, which can really be big. The One Ring, cards like Agatha's Soul Cauldron, tons of options for the card right now. Anything that's been cloned with Phyrexia Metamorph, that's an artifact, you can copy it. And then he is on the Smothering Tithe. 27 lands, not doing the Cavern of Soul stuff now, is on the Forbidden Orchard, and no Surveilland, I believe, still Spire of Industry. So yeah. Welcome to Topdeck.gg, your community's home for everything competitive Magic has to offer. Whether you're hosting an event, playing for a huge prize, or trying to advertise your store to thousands of players, we've got you covered. Using intuitive pairing software, playing Magic is a breeze. All your players have to do is sign up online, then scan the QR code in store. Give your competitors the gift of perfect information as their bracket updates in real time. Then, when the match is decided, our self-reporting software saves you time and leaves paper match slips in the past. Leave the heavy lifting to us so your community can sit back, relax, and have a great day of playing Magic. Now, surprisingly enough, this is a deck that I really like to get to talk about, but I just talked about it so much in the last video that I'm maybe not going to spend as much time on it. And that's another Erinis Street Urchin. This is a pretty cool player who I enjoy getting to talk to when I get to see him at events. Shout out to Kirkland, who's a super cool player. And yeah, I've talked this deck up a bit. It's pretty sick. It's super tricky. It has a ton of different options, right? Creature combos are hard to deal with. We have this big old goblin package that we can do sneaky little kiki jiki conspicuous snoop lines with and goblin recruiter stuff. A new really powerful option decks like this got is Eladamri Korvik Doll, which lets you cast creatures from the top of your library, as well as pay a green, tap 2 untap creatures you control, reveal a card from your hand or the top card of your library, and if it's a creature, you can just straight up put it into play, and you can do this on your turn. It's really, really powerful to have just uncounterable Dosen. Boom, he's in play. Uncounterable. Here's my combo. Uncounterable Hulk into play. Activate Erinis because of Street Urchin. Sacrifice it. Protean Hulk trigger on the stack. It's a really sick option. And again, this deck is going to be trying to slow the game down as it goes, right? This is a Collector Oof. Null Rod also deck, I think. I don't know if I mentioned it in the last one, but I talked about how they do creature artifact combos and the tension of Oof and Null Rod, but Erinis gets to just sacrifice it, so you don't have to worry about that. Not going over all the different lines they can do and everything that's here. Magus of the Order is pretty cool to see. That's not one you see a lot of. I have talked about the deck pretty recently. I don't know, maybe I need to get somebody on here to do a breakdown on the deck at one point, because I think it's probably underplayed right now, and it's really cool that there is a pretty powerful Gruul option. Sorceries, it's all tutors. You guys know the deal. Instants, mostly interaction, right? Tybalt's Trickery, Realms Uncharted. We'll have to keep an extra eye on the lands here. I know this card was popping up a little bit this past weekend. And, you guys know I love my land strategies right now. I'm an Archdruid, Charm, and Crop Rotation gamer. They're not on the Sowing Mica spawns. On the Sylvan Scrying, it's a pretty similar option. Artifacts, we've got Vexing Bauble, Null Rod, and Trinisphere as ways to kind of lock people out. Then fast mana, some card selection with Sensei's Top, and ways to do tricky things like reset our Goblin Recruiter sort of order, move things around. And then Cloudstone Cura, which can help us go infinite. Curse Mirror, nice little option. Pattern of Rebirth lets you just go and put a little Protean Hulk right into play. And then Carpet and Sylvan Library. Then 27 lands. We've got Emergent Zone, Cradle, Gaia Reach Sanitarium, a couple new ones, Horizon of Progress, Lazotep Quarry, which has kind of an extra mode in decks like this where you can tap sacrifice creature, add a mana of any color. Oh my goodness, I sacrificed my Protean Hulk. Oh, look at me. And then I can Shifting Woodland and get Protean Hulk back and do it again. And then Talon Gate. So we got a lot of new lands that are pretty viable in cEDH right now. The kind of crop rotation, just utility land decks, our land options have really gotten a lot higher. I really think it's super cool to see. And I'm enjoying the experimenting people are doing with some of these really powerful utility lands that don't have much of a downside. So we've got the first of a couple of Rog Siluses that we're taking a look at. This is a deck that hasn't changed much quantity-wise. There aren't a ton of new cards that came into here, but there's just a couple that have been incredibly impactful for the actual power level and consistency of this deck. And we've seen people opt for a couple different cards that they swap out for some of these new options. Creature packages basically stay the exact same in virtually every Rog Side deck. Sorceries, we're seeing the Get Probe in and Swan Song out pretty much universally at this point. Whether that's correct, I don't know, but they seem to be doing it and having, good success with it. Another slot we've been seeing come out is the Wheel of Misfortune, and or if you're concerned about budget, Time Twister slot come out and opting for 3 wheels instead of all 4. Here, opting for all 4 wheels still. Some players were on Infernal Plunge before, not opting for Infernal Plunge here, so maybe you had cut that instance. Again, no Swan Song, still on all the cheap interaction that you're going to expect. And then the new super powerful option for this deck, Flare of Duplication. Hearing people at the event talk about how much people can sandbag this flare now and how they just let someone else cast the first Nas and then, try to politic their way through a counter war and then end up with a Flare of Duplication copying a Nas, and then maybe somebody else does it as well. Really, really powerful card in this deck that really lets you double up on busted stuff. You can double Taint Impact, you can double Demonic Tutor, you can do all kinds of ridiculous things. Here we see the lack of a Conqueror's Flail, so maybe opting to cut that as well. And then, a whole bunch of mana defense grid, Grinding Station again, pretty much a staple at this point of the decks. And then we do see both Necros, Necropotence and Necrodominance. Like I said, this is basically like, I think from what was standard-ish before, opting to run Flare of Duplication, Necrodominance, and Get Probe over like Swan Song, Infernal Plunge, Conqueror's Flail. And maybe not, that was maybe the exact changes this player made, but like compared to the average list that we've been seeing recently, those seem to be the main swaps, and it seems like the deck has just gotten way more powerful and consistent. Then we got another Nadu. We got the Elvish Herder, which I don't think we saw in the last one. We are on the Thoracle. Not all of them run it. Kitten Ewit, I mean, again, pretty similar to what we last saw. We have a couple of the tap untappers, things that make tokens, things that help our deck be more consistent, like Trinket Mage, and then busted cards in the deck like Kitten and, the clones and things like that you just expect to see at this point. Sorceries is running the Transmute Artifact. I don't think we saw that in the last one. Instance is not running the Sea King's Blessing and the whatever the green one's called. So none of that here, which again, we haven't seen people, reach a consensus on yet. We got the Force of Vigor and the Misdirection. Misdirection and Commandeer and Force of Vigor as well, all being cards I've been seeing a bit more of, and players who are looking to take advantage of like draw engines or playing a more mid-rangey control game and not want to be caught, tapped out. Always want to have an option to, have something to do. Really keeping the card quality very high for their instance, not opting to run any real Nadu cards here. Artifacts. We are on the One Ring, free equipment that's free that we love, and then vast mana, no kind of disruptive element here. And then we're on the Earthcraft, which is another option that Nadus are taking to turn their kind of ridiculous already mana production and token production into even more ridiculous mana production. And then 32 lands, so still pretty high land count. Cradle, Field of the Dead. We see 2 players in the same event who did very well with it. Pretty decently different lists that they're opting to run with different mana bases and prioritizing some Nadu cards, card quality maybe over some, and in different areas. So Tymna Jeska, you guys remember Mardu Summer, right? A deck that has not been super present and doesn't pop up that often now, but has always been pretty good commander pairing, right? Jeska being an outlet in the zone, being able to control the board. Tymna, of course, just being generically one of the better commanders that exists in our format, offering you a pretty decent combination of colors here. And we see like stapley cards of the Mardu shells that are doing reanimatory stuff, right? Of like the Chernobyl style decks, which usually lean into some amount of building for Tymna, some amount of building for Reanimator, and then also trying to do Jeska-y stuff potentially. So DRC, great storm option, Hope of Girapur, pretty good with Tymna, and also great little silence effect. And then we have like some discard enablers that are kind of cool, like Insolent Neonate. Part of the cost, discard a card. Oh, Hoarding Broodlord or Abdel Adrian are in my graveyard. I'm about to do some shenanigans. We also get that with Inti Seneschal of the Sun, which is when you attack, you can discard a card. And then when you discard cards, you can like impulse draw. Card you might be familiar with in some other formats, and is like pretty good with Tymna, pretty good with Reanimator. Like this is a card that just synergizes a ton with all sorts of things. Great at cracking top deck tutors. Just a pretty good card in general. This is the type of card we haven't seen as much of recently. Tymna decks aren't really building to be Tymna decks. We don't see as many Sarah Ascendants nowadays, though I think still reasonable card to be playing, and pressures life totals pretty well. Generically good cards, right? Your Lothos, your Orcish Bowmasters, Boromir still showing up here, though it's kind of fallen out of favor. Delny popping up, doubling our, Docksides and Ragavans and all our Tymna shenanigans. Abdel Adrian, you guys are probably familiar with this. Basically, let's just go infinite with making infinite creatures and infinitely untapping and tapping our mana rocks to make infinite mana. Is basically a much more improved version of the World Gorger Dragon combo in terms of how safe it is, although it doesn't let you use land mana. Combos with Animate Dead, Necromancy comes into play, exiles that, goes back to the graveyard, card comes back. Hoarding Broodlord, pretty busted little card to reanimate. One of the better options for Reanimator, just kind of builds its own combo. Go get the Saw in half, get the whatever else you want to do. Boom, you're good. Sorceries. Tutors, good cards. Reanimate. Reanimate really being the only card that sticks out here, and it doesn't really stick out when you're seeing Hoarding Broodlords in the list. Also a pretty good card with things like Boromir and Ranger Captain. And we're on just the one wheel, no misfortune. Instance, Burnt Offering. That's a card that you see go pretty well with Hoarding Broodlord. Go get your Saw in Half the Broodlord. Go get Burnt Offering. Go get something you want to cast with Burnt Offering mana. We're not on Pyrenees Abyss here, but we are on Nas. That should get the job done too. Calling the Weak. Lightning Axe, another discard outlet that just as a part of paying the cost of Lightning Axe, you put a card in the graveyard. Players aren't going to be able to respond to that. It just happens, and then you're ready to pop off. We do have Orm's Chant showing up here and Silence. As well as we had, what is it, Revel and Silence on the back of this creature. So like 3 castable, like silence effects on an instant. Then we got the Entomb because we're a Reanimator deck. We have multiple ways to combo with that kind of effect. Plus we're an Underworld Breach Grinding Station deck. Artifacts, got a whole bunch of fast mana. There's that Grinding Station I talked about. We are on the Vexing Bauble, pretty hot. Again, pretty much another silence effect in this deck. It's like the 6th one. Cloudstone Curio, which is going to let us get infinite mana with Dockside Extortionist. You can also use that to loot Bowmaster if we don't have access to Jeska, or we just get infinite mana, play Jeska, minus it, hit the table, and then keep doing that over and over. And we are on the One Ring. And then you see the Animate Dead and the Necromancy we talked about, Blind Obedience and Static Prison being pretty, Static Prison, a card I was super high on in my reviews. Blind Obedience, a card that's decently popular, especially in Dockside combo decks. And then Chthonian Nightmare, which has been a huge new option for black Dockside combo decks in any kind of reanimatory graveyard strategy. Amazing, gives you another option to be able to loop your Dockside, go infinite, kill everybody with Jeska, and then only on the 25 lands, I don't believe a single Surveil land. We are in the Phyrexian Tower. Super cool looking list. I'm sure Max P played it amazingly. Didn't get to play against him this weekend, but Mardu got a lot of hype. It got some new toys recently, like a lot of decks did. And Tymna and Jeska is a pretty powerful commander combination, so it might be a list to keep your eyes on there. And if you've been interested in Mardu, this might be a really great option for you. Next up, we have Sisay. And you might be thinking, oh, Sisay, oh, you covered Sisay a million times. It's just, which planeswalkers? Where are they? Where are the planeswalkers? No, they're not here. And that's because if I am correct, New England Clam Chowder, Director's Cut, is a variant of Clam Chowder Sisay, which is basically 5-color good stuff using Sisay. And while we have talked about this variant of the deck on the channel, I don't think I've covered it in a top 16 yet. And if I can, I sure don't remember it. You're going to notice immediately, there's not all that many legends. We've got generically good ones like Kinnan and Ragavan, Lotho, Derevi, Emil, Kutzel, great options to be able to search up and put into play with Sisay that pretty much all the decks want to run, help you go infinite, help you do whatever your heart desires. We also have Tiny Bones, which is another kind of like Ragavan at home that lets you cast non-land permanents from somebody's graveyard if you hit them with your 1/1 Death Toucher, and is another 1-drop black creature with Sisay. So, but we don't have this big overlapping thing of legendary creatures and these creature combos we're trying to do. We're trying to keep the deck really, really clean and just use Sisay as an outlet, basically. Where, let's say we cast a Dockside, we're able to activate Sisay and go get Emil, or go get one of our silence effects like Teferi, bounce Dockside, replay it, do it again. Then we can search up Emil, get infinite mana, put a Kinnan into play, and then go get activate Kinnan, put Bowmaster into play, ping the table to death. We're not doing any of the Mount Doom stuff. Usually, it might be in the list, but we'll see. That's just a pretty clean way to do it. And we have other things we can combo with, like Derevi, and then Kutzel is just a great option to shut people out. Italian Great Value Engine. Really just using Sisay as a bit of an outlet that can give us a little bit of consistency in a mid game potentially, but in combination with cards like Thassa's Oracle, which you don't normally see here because we're running Demonic Consultation and we're running, spoiler alert, Underworld Breach. And you can see the deck construction is a little bit different. We talk about how Sisay is usually run 1 to 4 sorceries, and it's usually one of the DTs, Neoform, maybe Eldritch Evolution, maybe Finale, stuff like that. Here, this is what you would expect Najeela to run, and that's kind of what this deck is taking the place of, is 5-color, Najeela, good stuff. Bunch of tutors, Sevrek, Mean Bet. We're jamming good spells. Good bit of interaction. We still do have the Abrupt Decay to deal with those tricky opposition agents, but we're also running Intuition, running Final Fortune, Brain Freeze, the Demonic Consultation, and the Tainted Pack that we talked about, and Born Upon a Wind. I wonder if we're on Necro. Probably not. And then artifacts, you got LED, Agatha Soul Cauldron, still good stuff with the deck to be able to use. Soul Cauldron is still a pretty awesome card. But then rocks, and we are on the One Ring, and we are in Ad Nauseam, notably. Enchantments, Mystic, Rhystic, Breach, just the best ones. No Necropotence. We are still on the Gaia's Cradle, and our creature count is 21. Totally reasonable to run Gaia's Cradle in that scenario. 5-color lands, not going too cute with the utility stuff. Not even running Otawara. And then you also have the old Sisay kind of build making a top 16 appearance as well. We got the Invasion of Ikoria. We've got the whole suite of Planeswalkers. We've covered this kind of build a million times. This is one of the ones running Rocco, so that's interesting. We're on the Sky Turtle, which is pretty popular. But yeah, the only real new addition we're seeing here is Felia, which lets us flicker something, flash it in, nice cheap little white legend. This is more like the Sisay you're used to seeing at this point, really. Is opting to run Lavinia, so like can search up for disruptive pieces, value engines, or just ways to combo off like they love to do. And then this is the sorceries we usually see, right? DT Finale. Instance, we do have the Strict Serenade, first one of these we're seeing this weekend. Okay amount of counter spells, Sword Splash Shares. We got the Abrupt Decay to deal with those pesky op agents, more interaction, a Quarter Calling. Artifacts, we are on the Chromatic Orrery, which I feel like has become a little bit less popular in Sisay, but is a pretty cool option. Mana, Relic of Legends, Soul Cauldron. Enchantments, a whole bunch more than we just saw. Cultist, Deafening Silence, so very different. Definitely the not trying to cast spells version of Sisay. Oath of Nissa, Smothering Tides, and then 29 lands, also on the Cradle, is on the Mount Doom as an outlet. Sky Shroud Expanse popping up here. Wow. Filter lands, not usually ones we see too often here in cEDH. I don't know if I've ever even covered that in like an Azorius deck. Maybe. I wonder if that is intentional or if that's a mistake, but maybe there is some intentionality to it. And if so, maybe it's like some super next level stuff. Then we got Sharky's Tevesh Kraum, which has been kind of a mainstay. I feel like I've covered it a little bit less often, but I know the last time I talked about it, I was really high on how it was built and it felt like it was constructed super smart. Might not be super familiar with recent changes to the list. We're just going to talk about it in general. It's kind of another just good take on Grixis stuff. So we got the Narset, which is like something we saw like the Rock Size run and have cut. Same with Notion Thief. So kind of bringing back that kind of deal. Generically good creatures, you know, Kitten works great with our Tevesh. And then we've got Hullbreaker Horror, which can also help us go infinite with Tevesh. And then sorceries, really good stuff. You know, some of the Tevesh Kroms lean really mid-rangey, but here we've got like Last Chance Warrior's Oath, usually kind of proactively sliding cards. 3 wheels to go with those Notion Thieves and our Bowmasters, you know, the P-Grass. We are on the Git Probe. So like, you know, other than like the Toxic Deluge, that's the one thing that really stands out compared to like a Rock Side, and then Reanimate as well, of course. Not running Entomb, so just naturally reanimating some stuff. Rituals and interaction, nothing especially standing out about here. We're not doing the Dispels or the Offer You Can't Refuses, keeping it pretty clean here. Artifacts, we are on the Imposter Mech, which we've seen, you know, pop up every now and then. Usually like the Tivets really like to run it. And then like Tevesh Kroms. We're on the D grid, whole bunch of mana, Wishclaw Talisman, you know how it goes. On the Necro, Rhystic, Mystic, Breach, no Necro Dominance. Didn't really expect it. And then 26 lands, we're on the Undercity Sewers. I feel like it's a really clean, good way to approach Tevesh Kraum. Obviously, it worked out pretty well here at top 16 in this event. This is a deck that I usually like to recommend to people if you're interested in Grixis as to start. So like, honestly, if you're into Grixis, this might, or you know, wanting to try something more proactively slanted and you want blue, maybe taking this exact list might be a great start. Seems pretty good. You get to draw cards. You get to turbo out Breach and Thoracle Winds. You get to Notion Thief people. You gotta love that. I've missed Notion Thief so much. I kind of been wanting to jam it recently myself. And then we got one more Mardu list before we get into our top 4, and that's Tymna Dargo. So we're gonna see some of the same good cards, right? We're gonna see our Docksides and DRCs and our Delnies and things like that. But then we're also gonna see more Dargo stuff. We like being able to sacrifice things. We like the Skirk Prospectors. Maybe we're looping Docksides. Maybe we're doing Ruthless Technomancer loops with our Mayhem Devil. Maybe we're doing Dual Caster Twin Flame. I don't love as much, but you know, you got to do what you got to do. Then we've got Magda. Might be meaning that we're a Citadel deck. You know, they love to be able to crack 5 treasures, put a Citadel into play, but also there's tons of good stuff to go put into play with Magda. Just a good card in general. Rakdos the Muscle is a really cool one because when you sack another creature, exile cards equal to its mana value from top of target player's library. Your next end step, you may play those cards. Mana of any type can be spent. Works incredibly well with Dargo if we're ever sacrificing Dargo or just looping other things we might sacrifice too. We also get to trigger Rakdos, but like we sack Dargo, we get 7 cards off of somebody's library. That's insane. Sorceries, we're on the Molten Duplication, no Twin Flame, and so we're on that and Heat Shimmer as options to double up Docksides and stuff, but also those are our ways to go infinite with Dualcaster Mage. Got a bunch of tutors. We are on the Impurity of the Abyss, pretty hot. We're on the Reanimate as well. We don't really have a big reanimate target like the Hoarding Broodlord, but you know, we can sacrifice the thing and then bring it back. We reanimate a Dockside after we Skirk Prospector it away, and then we are on the One Wheel, Siege the Mirror instance. We got the Burnt Offering, also on the Sacrifice. You kind of really like these effects in black for your Dargo builds, because I get to play Dargo for 1, sacrifice and make 7. You know, maybe I got a Rakdos in play. Cooking with gas if you get to do all that stuff going on. That is insane. Silence, no Orange Chant, Final Fortune, Tainted Pact, Naws, Soul Partition. Just the 1 Pyroblast, no Red Elemental Blast. Interesting. Not really opting to do too many counter spells. Artifacts. So we got the Portable Hole. So notably, we are a Goblin Engineer deck. We're not a Goblin Welder deck, but Engineer is pretty nice to be able to search something up and then, sacrifice something else, put it into play. Can be really nice at getting Altar Dementia, which is, a nice outlet for Dargo. Help us loop that. You can get a Portable Hole, Vexing Bauble, Defense Grid, like super flexible. And then Walter, as it's affectionately called, Altar of the Wretched, which is just like a dumb card for Dargo that enters, you sack a creature, you like draw 7, mill 7. If you sacrifice this thing or get it in your graveyard anyway, you can just spend 2 and a black to just get it back in your hand. It's very, very dumb, especially with Engineer. Or you can like tutor it up with Engineer and then immediately pay the mana, put it in your hand, and then play it. Pretty gross. And then Curse Mirror, another nice flexible option. Chthonian Nightmare, we're doing the thing. Now, we don't have an outlet in the zone. We don't have any of this stuff, but also we can like Chthonian Nightmare loop with a Rakdos in play. That's pretty good too. Also just getting infinite treasures, killing everybody with a Bowmaster. That stuff's pretty good too. We're on the Necropotence and Breach, Touch, and Trouble in Pairs, which is a pretty nice value engine. And then 24 lands with the 1 Surveil land. So 2 Mardu lists, two different Tymna Mardu shells doing the thing here. You love to see it. I don't know, dude. Mardu Summer, dude. Maybe it's back. All right, we got our top 4, starting with another Tymna Kraum, and it ain't the last one. Let me tell you, boys. Standard creatures. It is with the Dranith. So basically all of the stuff you expected in the last one, and the Dranith here. Got the Deluge, no Reanimate. The rest is pretty standard. Again, I don't hate Tymna Kraum. It might come across that way. Just trying to keep it nice and clean and concise for you guys, right? Instance. So we are on the path. Strict Serenade showing up here in Tymna Kraum. Fire Covenant as well, so doubling up on board wipes and, Cycrypt, but that's just, it don't really count as a board wipe. That's different. Just the Pyro, no Red Blast. Artifacts, pretty standard too, J-Lo, bunch of rocks, 4 talismans, Witchclaw Talisman too. Another Smothering Tithe Enjoyer. No more copy artifacts, what the heck? And then Mystic is on Necropotence, which is an option I've been starting to like more and more in Tymna Kraum, and then Breach Ristic, of course. And then 27 lands. No Forbidden Orchard, no Cavern of Souls. Is on the Undercity Sewers, so another Surveil land enjoyer. Also got to talk to Corey a good bit this past weekend. Super cool dude. Then we got Ori playing Rogsai, and you guys know what it is, right? You got these 6 creatures. You got the Get Probe. I think Ori is one of the players who has cut Misfortune to make room for some of the new cards. The rest of this is pretty standard. Not a Swan Song Enjoyer, no Swan Song. Is he on Flail? I think he's cut that as well. So yeah, also cut Flail. Pretty similar little list. There's a Necrodominance, Grinding Station, Defense Grid. So looks like he did opt to run Infernal Plunge though, so is still running that. I don't see anything different in the instance or the artifacts. And then the mana base, we do have 2 Surveil lands, so on Raucous Theater and on Undercity Sewers. That's pretty significant. I've heard some people test that. Didn't know somebody as good as Ori was doing it. There you go. Top 4 with double tap land in your turbo deck when it only has 24 lands. So what do you haters know? Ori, fantastic player. Was very fortunate to get to lose to him in my second round. Keeps doing it. Keeps winning and topping. And amazing player. Rocksai's awesome. Then in second place, we got another Sisay. And it is again a more traditional Planeswalker build. Opting to run the Oko, the Hada, like stuff you don't necessarily have to run, but it's a pretty cool option in Sisay. And they pop up. Bunch of Dorks, Kinnan, another Felia Enjoyer, Rocco. Really, really similar so far in the creatures and Planeswalkers to the last Sisay we looked at. Valiant DT, same sorceries, I think. Instance, we've got Offer. There's the Cord, Call, Abrupt Decay still here. Is running Worldly Tutor, which I don't think every Sisay actually does, surprisingly. And then is on the Miscast, not the podcast, the card. And then Fierce Swat, Hullbreaker, is on Dismember, which is a card I like specifically in Sisay. It's very cheap at what it does. Sisay doesn't really care about its life total, so Dismember is a great option. Artifacts, Cauldron, Relic, Rocks. You guys know what it is. No Chromatic Orrery. And then enchantments, very, very, very similar, if not the same as that last one. Rhystic Mystic, Deafening Silence, Blind Obedience, the Oath of Nissa, you guys know the deal. And then 29 lands, Cradle, Mount Doom, is running Tarnished Citadel. Another Sisay, getting it done into top 4. The deck is kind of on a tear right now, and multiple versions now, multiple completely different builds, top 16 this event. And then your winner for Cowtown Throwdown, Isaac playing Tymna Kraum. You guys, come on, you guys knew it. You guys already knew it. Same 13 creatures. Sorceries is on the Deluge, 1 wheel. Nothing else really standing out there. Instance, playing Dispel, double red blast, no Path to Exile, no Fire Covenant, artifacts, bunch of rocks, Wishclaw, enchantments. Okay, this is where it gets pretty interesting. Some pretty cool stuff here, actually. Mystic, Ristic, Breach, Necropotence, even not that spicy at this point for Tymna Kraum, and Smothering Tithe. Both like common options ran in like, I don't know, maybe a quarter of TNK decks. Copy Artifact. I talked about this card showing up at this event. Freedom Waffle Planet, the last one, starting to show up more. Steal Enchantment. This is one that kind of comes up as a little bit of a meme in like lower color decks or like 3-color decks, but can really break up a game where the 2-for-1 of like casting something to take your Ristic, and now I have maybe 2 Ristics of my own, pretty busted. The double blue pips, curious to know how often that's a problem in casting it, especially early on, like on an early Ristic or Mystic. But yeah, that's one of those cards people talk about a bunch that you don't often see. And then also Copy Enchantment, which is a card I've been thinking about too. 2 and a blue, enters the battlefield as a copy of any enchantment on the battlefield. That works with Necro, it works with Ristic, it works with whatever. Smothering Tithe. Yeah, just trying, really testing the waters with these things that are kind of, more sandbaggy, see what my opponents get and take the best option thing. That's kind of the metagame we're in, where we're all playing a bunch of clones and now we're stealing enchantments and copying artifacts. So metagame's shaking up. And then we are in the Cavern of Souls. No Surveillance. So yeah, not the wildest top 4, top 16 in the world, but I mean, the winning TNK is actually, they are kind of cooking with some of these card choices. So that's pretty sick to see. Let me know down below what you thought of this tournament, what you thought of this video, which of these decks was your favorite, what's some of the hottest tech that you're liking right now that you might have seen here. Are you going to be running Steal Enchantment in your next tournament? Let me know down below. We're getting really close to the Topdeck Invitational. Players are winning their slots in and getting those last bit of points. Curious to know what you think that metagame is going to look like. It's going to be 64 of the best players, period, competing what is surely to be the most competitive cEDH event ever. About, like a year's worth of events leading up into it. Pretty crazy to see, and we're getting really close. So let me know what you think about that series and how you think that's going to shake out. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. And as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.